In 2019, I was having a very hard time being around people, and I eventually packed up my belongings and went to live my life at age 30 by myself in the woods. I was scouting an area that was in Delaware County, which is in the suburbs of Philly, looking for the perfect spot to spend my summer. After my long journey, testing different areas out, having bad experiences such as my tent flooding after heavy rains, I found a huge hill that probably went up for a few thousand feet. This certain hill was on a giant rock, outcropping with many beautiful stones such as garnets embedded in the host rock. I honestly thought I found the perfect camp, secluded from everyone and everything, surrounded by a large creek. The area was well planted with huge trees of many sorts. So due to all these factors being perfect for what I was looking for, I set my tent up on top of the hill. The tent that I owned was a one-person tent, literally just big enough for me to sleep in, which is all I really needed. I'm pretty much set. All I had left to do was create a barrier with local tree branches so I could keep out anyone and hide my tent. Upon stringing up a huge wall of branches in the area and putting trip lines around my campsite, I began living my life. Many days passed that summer, before the incident that changed my life forever happened. So before I delve into this experience, I want to add that it would be nearly impossible for any dog or anyone to get up this hill. Someone would have to be extremely dedicated in finding this place to get to it. During my adventure living alone in the wilderness, my brother would occasionally meet me a bit away to drop off supplies such as beer, food, and water. On a beautiful summer night after it just rained very heavily, I was laying up on the hill right outside my tent, and I was immersed in extremely dense fog. The whole area looked as if it was covered in a huge cloud. I was tired from a long walk earlier, so eventually when it hit around 10 p.m., I retired to my tent. I crawled in and laid down with all my equipment around me. It was extremely cramped in there. I zipped up the door flap and began relaxing, as I started reading a good book I had when I noticed it was getting really late, so I got my flashlight out and put on my headlamp and just chilled. Periodically, I would text my sister to let her know that I was okay and just conversate about certain things. It hit around 1 a.m. when I just started having a very strange feeling. You know, the feeling when something's wrong. I tried to shrug it off, but it wouldn't go away. My tent had a tiny opening at the top with mesh so you can see out of it. Other than that, you can't really see anything outside the tent. As I was reading, I suddenly heard something run very loudly towards my tent, right on my left-hand side. It stopped right next to me and began loudly barking, almost as if a dog is right in your face about to attack. I suddenly shuddered with fear, saying to myself, that can't be a dog. There's no possible way anything could get to my tent, with my barricade and my trip lines, or at least not without making an extreme struggle and lots of noise. So in complete fear, hearing this beast growl and bark like a maniac, I fumbled to get my phone in panic, and I started texting my sister, saying, listen, there's something outside my tent, and it's pretty pissed off. She texted me back, saying maybe it's a dog. I'm like, no, there's no way this is a dog. There's no way it could get up this hill. The thing stopped harassing me, and eventually disappeared after about 10 minutes. I was frightened after what I heard, so I dialed 911 on my phone and held onto it in case that thing came back. After an hour passed and nothing happened, I began to relax a little bit. I kicked off my shoes, cracked open a beer, and resumed my reading. Let me just say I've been in the woods for 6 months straight before, and never had anything like this happen. It was so chilling that I get sick thinking about it. As I'm laying there, time started to pass with no sign of the creature. I was too horrified to even look out the tent at this point, plus the ground was covered in fog. Then 3 o'clock rolled around. I firmly held the phone in my right hand, just in case. With the sudden movement passing, I was completely paralyzed. I laid there in a state of fear so intense that I thought I was going to die. And then something grabbed me. Whatever grabbed me began picking me up and smashing me into the ground. This thing was so strong that I felt like a rag doll. It just kept squeezing me and shaking me as if I was nothing to it. I looked at my phone in my hand, desperately trying to move my thumb to hit the dial button, but it wasn't possible. This thing was breathing so loud and making noises so sinister that the impression I got was that this thing crawled right out of hell and wants to take me out of my tent. The cries from it were almost like a loud pulsing sound, similar I guess to a giant heart beating out of control. It beat the living hell out of me. I pictured myself being carried away by this horrible thing into a cave to be experimented on or something really evil. after fighting for probably 7 minutes while being completely paralyzed, it suddenly stopped. I've never felt anything as intense as the state of fear that I was in at that moment. I was finally able to move, and I immediately hit 911 with my thumb. I got a girl dispatcher on the line. I thought to myself, what do I say? I'm in the middle of nowhere and I was attacked by something no one is going to take seriously. I hung the phone up and started texting my sister, saying, listen, here's my location. I was just attacked by something, but I got no answer. I just kept texting her, but still no answer. I cowered in my tent for the next few hours until the sun came up. I was so worn out from the beatdown that I crawled out of my tent in extreme pain. After a complete search of the area for footprints or a sign something had been there, I came up empty. No lines were tripped, no branches were moved, and my tent wasn't damaged. Doesn't make much sense, but I'm damaged. I could barely walk. Eventually, I moved my campsite and got a bigger tent. I still don't know what it was that attacked me, and I don't know what that thing was menacingly barking outside my tent. I'm scared to this day. I now know that there are things so powerful out there that they literally can paralyze you just by coming close to you. And apparently, they can even beat the hell out of you through your tent without leaving any sign of having been there. This all really happened, and I wish that I could tell the story better, but this is all I've got. Was it a Bigfoot? The Dogman? I don't know, but it could have killed me very easily if it wanted to. It could have made me a missing person in a heartbeat. I don't know why I survived or how. I have a feeling that this thing was pissed at me for tearing down giant tree branches to fortify my camp. That day I tore a lot of branches down, and then I was attacked. So to anyone out there, if you're camping, don't harm any type of tree or plant that might trigger these things to attack. Let me know your guys' thoughts on this true event.